Welcome back. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition with myself, Naledi Molawa. Let's get into our panel for this evening. Concerns around sexual misconduct at schools are growing, with over 100 cases under investigation. The number is believed to be higher, with the Basic Education Department saying there's a gross underreporting of cases. Now, we're keen to get your thoughts on this one as we expand the conversation and have a national discussion. How safe do you feel your children are at school? So send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584 or give us a call on 010-594-6010. Joining us on this discussion is Basic Education Safety Director, Mr. Sfiso Ngobese. We've got SATU General Secretary, Dr. Mugwene Maluleke. Education Labour Relations Council spokesperson, Bernice Loxton, also joins us. We also have with us the COSA's Deputy Secretary General, Wusang Legega, as well as activist Rosie Mudene, joining us in this all-important discussion. And I think, Bernice, perhaps, good evening to you and to everyone else on the panel, but perhaps you can start us off. The Education Labour Relations Council, having actually looked into how many cases of sexual misconduct we are aware of, are being investigated, and how speedily we're dealing with them. Paint us that picture first, if you will.
Thank you, Naledi, and good evening to the viewers at home. In terms of the reported statistics, which is 111 for the current financial year, which is the 2024-25 financial year, the highest reporting province being KZN, where 25 cases were referred to the ELRC. We just need to put into context, although this is the number of cases that were referred to the ELRC, not all of these cases are in jurisdiction. And another important factor as well is the fact that there are a number of delays in finalizing these cases. And these are mostly cases from previous financial years. So these are old cases included in this number of 111 cases. And some of the reasons for the delay in the finalization of these cases are, for instance, where alleged teachers who are alleged of committing sexual misconduct get lawyers to represent them, which is their constitutional right. But however, this causes delays as we have constant postponements. We have also noticed a trend in recent years where the alleged perpetrators submit medical certificates. So this also further delays the process where they are not attending cases that then has to be postponed. And then another reason is in terms of the witnesses to the case that are not able to attend because of school examinations or school closure during the school holiday period.
Sure. And so, I mean, that's a lot that you've said. Now, I look at the number, 111, but you say that number includes cases from previous financial years. Perhaps as the Department of Basic Education, Mr. Ngobese, you can help us with the data that the department has. As you process what safety looks like in our schools and you hear the Education Labour Relations Council saying 111 cases have been referred to them, and some of those cases have been going on for longer than just the period of this financial year. What is the data that you have of sexual misconduct matters that are being looked into in our schools?
Well, in terms of the department, because the cases, especially from the perspective of the national office, most of these cases are reported locally, in schools, in district and provincial offices. And as a Department of Education, we always struggle to actually keep up in terms of getting accurate data when it comes to these particular cases. Some as a result of our side in the department in terms of reporting processes. So it's a very, very difficult number that I can give at this stage. But I do know that from the ELRC, from our teacher development unit in the DPE, they have these particular statistics. I might not have them on the spot, but certainly it is always a worrying factor in the department when these numbers are reported and these cases are reported.
I'm just listening to your response here, Mr. Ngobese, and a little bit concerned here. You're saying that cases of sexual misconduct are reported locally within districts, and so there would be a struggle for national to have that data. I mean, certainly that speaks to, you know, a system failure. I don't know if you would agree with that. Why is that in place when this is such a serious issue? I don't think this is certainly a small matter, Mr. Ngobese.
No, definitely. I should have, if I had known that you will actually require the numbers, I would have, especially with the labor relations section in the department, because that is where our statistics on this particular matter is kept. So I do not want to come here and underreport. I would have preferred that I would have, come up with the accurate numbers so that I don't underreport or overreport in terms of the numbers.
Okay. Any parent who's been having, the discussion certainly that has been had in the country, the fears of parents are our children safe in schools? Rosie, perhaps we bring you in here as an activist and someone who certainly has spoken about, gender-based violence and rape in our country as such a serious matter. Do we have all the information that we need to at least get to the bottom of the problem in ensuring that our children are safe in schools?
It's not necessarily about having the information on whether the children are safe. It's about the attitudes of the system, the attitudes of the schools that deal with these type of issues. So looking at various cases, and one particularly which was highlighted in the series School Ties, which was happening in affluent schools, is that there was a high number of sexual grooming, high number of sexual abuse that was happening in the school. But knowing what their rights were as an institution, a lot of these schools chose to push it under the carpet and then let the perpetrator go. So that is also then adding to adding more fuel to the fire, which then speaks to the statistics that my learned friend spoke about earlier on, which a lot of the time, as we know, are not 100% accurate, because the statistics are based on crimes that are actually put onto the payroll. So in terms of knowing what to do with our environments, it's about changing the attitudes of the institutions themselves, about not looking through the lens of what we know as rape culture, that is blaming the victim and letting the perpetrator go. And looking at the aspect in terms of the perpetrator, we know that people know how to work the system. The system is not child-friendly, it's not child-centered. So alleged perpetrators and legal teams and lawyers who represent them know the various loopholes that you can go through. So that also prolongs the process. And once you prolong the process, we know the emotional impact that it has on the victims, the families, the children, and so forth. And that's how those certain things fall through the cracks. So going back to the information's there, and it's about rehashing that information, but it's more about the attitudes. How are you changing your attitudes when it comes to reporting about crimes? How are you changing your attitudes about vetting certain perpetrators before they are allowed to work with children? And not even just vetting in terms of looking on what's online, is actually speaking to various schools, letting them know, listen, we've let this person go, this is what he's about. Because when you look at a lot of the cases, particularly when it happened with sexual grooming and sexual harassment within schools, the perpetrators, it doesn't only happen on one or two cases, it happens on multiple cases because they know they can get away with it.
That's frightening. And so that speaks to something that would, the likelihood of in one particular school there being more children that are struggling as victims, quite possible when you do have a suspected perpetrator. Busang is with us as well, and of course Busang Legeka is Deputy General Secretary of COSAS, representing the Congress of South African Students. Busang, perhaps you can help us here from the perspective of learners and students. I mean, what's the conversation that is being had about sexual misconduct in schools? Is there a sense that learners are given a safe place to go to raise these issues and that they are heard?
Thank you for the opportunity. Firstly, let's start by saying that after COVID-19, this is the second pandemic that the country is facing with the gender-based violence. Because in South Africa, one child is raped every 3 minutes. This means that about 530 children get raped every day. And 3 children are murdered every day in South Africa. Many of these cases are unreported. Child abuse, including physical and mental injury, sexual abuse, and neglect treatment. So coming to this issue of safety in schools, I think that our Department of Education is failing us. Wherever we are going to have securities or guard personnel that doesn't even have a SIRA to protect the children. Where you can find, where in a schoolyard, you can find there only 3 to 4 securities that deal with over 1,500 kids. So to come with this sensitive case that we are dealing with today is that we are very deeply disappointed on what happened to the victim, to say. But as COSAS, we are standing to say that the Department of Education at some point must take a standstill and go in and report the case to say so that the state can take the certificate of the educator back, and the educator must never deal with kids ever in his life again.
That's interesting. Busang Legeka there of COSAS saying the Department of Education must take these cases forward to SACE. Now, SACE, of course, being the South African Council for Educators. Dr. Maluleke, I'm going to bring you in here, and you could, of course, are speaking from the position of SATU. I mean, there's the question around whether or not we're satisfied with the speed at which SACE then, takes teachers off the roll, if you will. And also what conversations we're having with teachers. Rosie earlier talked about, there needs to be an attitude change in our communities and certainly in our schools. Are we having those conversations?
No, good evening, Naledi, and good evening to your viewers at home and the panelists here. Let me just appreciate all the other speakers that have really stated very clear that this is something that the communities cannot smile at. We've got to be outraged by what we see in our schools, in our societies, and what COSAS is saying in terms of the Department of Education. Yes, I can say that we have the statistics. What we are lacking basically is an analysis of those statistics in order to really help us to be proactive in our schools. Because once you are able to identify the statistic and say, what is the location, what age is happening and where it's happening, then you are able to deploy your resources to the right targets and to the right location. We also, in the department, I was talking about reporting, and you were saying that, look, you are concerned. I'm also concerned because the reporting is a problem, I must say, because if the districts have the cases and therefore they don't fit into a national register, which we have called, Naledi, since 2000. We have always been saying there must be a register that is kept by the Department of National so that it keeps on helping health workers to be able to really do an investigation on the perpetrators as well, to understand what motivates them, so that we are then able to be proactive in terms of developing, strategies and intervention programs in terms of awareness and education and training. So this particular problem at the institutional level, which is also failing us in the sense that we have school policies that are supposed to protect our children, and we don't train the teachers around those particular policies. They are gathering dust. We don't train the parents around these particular policies that deal with sexual harassment and sexual cases and so forth, to the SGBs and to the broader community, and they, gathering the dust. So for my view is that we still have to do more in terms of, analyzing the statistics that is there. If it's 111 for a period of 2 to 3 years now, and there is underreporting, especially in rural provinces, because I agree with Rosie, if we don't change this attitude of the communities, our societies, to really stop blaming the victim, The victims are not able to report because when they report, they are being, treated as if they have caused this thing to themselves. Then others are even saying, you call this upon yourself. Why were you wearing a see-through? Why did you attend this? You remember there was in 2009 where we had to deal with a textbook, which was really saying, in terms of a case study, that you've got to blame this girl because why did the parents give this particular girl child permission to go and attend a party? And why did this particular girl child wear this type of clothes? And as if men and boys have a right over the body of a girl. And that, again, is an attitude issue of having raised us as men and boys to have this particular mentality of an entitlement that we can exert our power over women and girls. And that is an attitude issue. And I think we need to be able to address that as well. Because at an education institution, it must be a safe haven for our children.
Right. And anyone would agree with that. Our schools should be a safe haven for our children. But we're asking you as the viewer as well. Feel free to give us a call on 010-594-6010. Do you feel that your children are safe in schools? Is that a concern for you? And where a parent is, perhaps suspecting sexual misconduct at the school, where do they go for assistance? Send us a WhatsApp as well on 072-110-5584. We'll answer that question and also get some of your views on the other side of this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We continue our discussion as we look at certainly the confidence that you have in how safe your children are in schools. As we look at the national picture where sexual misconduct cases are concerned, and is sexual misconduct in schools that we're talking about, taking your calls to get your thoughts on how safe you believe your children are and where you think is a safe place for you to take your child, should you suspect that there is something to be worried about. Taking your calls on 010-594-6010 or send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584. Let's see some of the WhatsApps. I'll take about maybe two. Let's see. Andrew Khaliza says, if a teacher is found having an affair with a learner, they must be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Andrew, thank you so much for that. Anonymous sends this WhatsApp. Listen to this. Good evening. My 4-year-old was assaulted by a teacher in a preschool several times. I'm glad he managed to speak up. But what about those who can't speak? The teacher was suspended and later on expelled. Well, we continue this conversation with our guests, and Bernice, who is, of course, with the Education Labour Relations Council. I mean, there's a message there about someone who says their 4-year-old was sexually assaulted several times, and at the end of it, there was an expulsion of the teacher. But talk to me about the process. So once a parent comes forward and says, I believe that this has happened to my child, what is the process and the steps that are taken, and how often do we see criminal charges, or do we really see the teacher being removed?
Thank you for the question, Naledi. In terms of the ELRC processes, once a case is referred to the ELRC, where a teacher has been accused of sexual misconduct, the council appoints an independent commissioner who will then determine whether the teacher is guilty or not based on the evidence presented. Once a teacher is found guilty, the award is submitted to the Department of Social Development, where the teacher is added to the Child Protection Register, and they are then declared unsuitable to work with children. This information is also shared with the South African Council for Educators. And in addition, the provincial departments of education will then block the teacher on a cell. So these are all measures in place to ensure that the teacher does not find him or herself back into the schooling system.
Rosie, do you want to step in and talk to me about what you make of this process? Because once we start talking about a sexual assault, we are talking about a crime. So it certainly is one thing to say that the teacher may not find themselves back in the system after what is quite a process as described there by Bernice. Is it sufficient, though? Rosie?
Sorry, I didn't hear it was for me. So, okay, first of all, I mean, that process, yes, it's concrete, but then also understand the trauma, the additional trauma that a child and the family then have to go through if they're going to be going through the judicial system. But even taking it a few steps back is that, yes, those are the rules and the things and the trails that principals are supposed to follow, but we've seen that that's not the case because it's easier rather than to let the perpetrator go. And this doesn't just happen in schools. It's been happening in universities, it's been happening in corporate spaces and so forth. But then the reality is that once they get into the system, the judicial system, as I mentioned before, is that it's not child-centered. The process is incredibly long. If the parents aren't equipped financially, you're also relying on financial aid, but also it's a time-consuming process, which people also need to take into consideration when rehiring a certain perpetrator. So it's not just going to court once. It's sometimes the case is remanded, and we've seen the delays that the alleged perpetrators, and the legal teams put in place because they know how to work the system. So it's going back to the foundation of actually changing our attitude so that you don't have to go through that, so the child isn't put in danger. Is that vetting properly who comes into the child's learning space, who is being brought onto the property, and then honest conversations with the children. It's also about the teachers also observing. Has a child withdrawn? Has a child changed in their manner? Has their child changed in terms of their grades and drops? It's not just about the parents picking up the slack when the child then goes home.
Yeah, Mr. Ngobese, perhaps you can help us with the issue of vetting. I mean, there's, and you can also certainly add your thoughts to this issue of the process that is followed, and you know, just how successful that process really is of even getting teachers deregistered, for instance, by SACE after all of these other steps have been taken, if that's working smoothly enough. But what are we looking like in terms of vetting our teachers before they even enter our schools?
Yeah. Perhaps just before I get into the vetting, I must just indicate that the department has a protocol in terms of what actually you need to do, especially when there are issues of sexual misconduct and sexual harassment or even sexual assault in school. It's a step-by-step protocol which actually tells everybody in the sector step by step in terms of what needs to do, what is the role of the principal, what is the role of a school support-based team, what is the role of the SGP, the district, the province, as well as a national office. So all stakeholders, they have their roles in this particular protocol. I know also when it comes to vetting that the department well, I'm sure of this because in KZN, for example, where I recently monitored, it was very, very pleasing to see that teachers have been vetted. So it is an ongoing process, the vetting on both the Child Protection Register as well as the Sexual Offences Register. And even though this was, in the custody of the Department of Social Development, but Department of Basic Education have also been trained so that they are able to check the teachers on these particular registers. Even the teachers that come to school on a temporary basis, like your teacher assistants, there is a vetting that is done. It might not be as rigorous as the teachers that are employed permanently, but the department ensures that anyone who works within the department in a school setting needs to be vetted because of these challenges that we see.
Yeah, Dr. Maluleke, are you, as Satu, satisfied with the vetting process, or is this something that, for your members, perhaps is something that you may not necessarily support?
Well, we are part of the South African Council for Educators, which came up with this particular vetting, and therefore we support the vetting. We support, a professionalized vetting. Because as Bernice was indicating that now all of a sudden there's a new trend of medical certificates. So it's the same with the vetting. It depends on where you have been vetted, and it needs to be reviewed and be improved so that indeed it's a vetting that we can really put our faith in it and say, this person that we are employing indeed does not do these particular things. This person understands the role of a teacher as that of a parent, and then of a parent, the person that has got to provide that particular safe and protection to the students or the learners. So we support it, but I think it can be improved, and it has got to be improved. And I think the department says we have to look into this particular matter. But we also think as such that over and above the vetting, we need to improve the training of our educators. In other words, when you are registered at the university, that's where you are also supposed to go through this particular serious vetting that we are admitting into teaching colleges a person who really wants to be a teacher and is going to be doing what the teachers do in a very noble way, to work with the students, work with the learners in this particular journey for them to really realize their full potential. Yeah. So you need to have people who have got ethical behavior and so forth. So we can improve on this thing. But I don't think that education is very key. So over and above all these things, we've got to making sure that there are serious educational programs, working together with people like Rose, and many other people together in our schools so that we really have, schools to be safe.
Okay. Yeah, I need to move towards getting final thoughts, really, yes, and recommendations on what we do moving forward. Busang, as COSAS, your wish list on what needs to be prioritized so that you, the learners, feel safe in our schools. If you were in the room right now with the Department of Basic Education, what needs to be done immediately?
I would suggest that the Department of Education try to increase the security in our schools. That must be the first one, to increase the security in our schools. And the second one must go again and touch the base with the new minister so that they can go on the ground and understand and find what is it really is a problem with the certain individuals of teachers, or is a problem with the teacher cabal as a whole, madam. But at the end of the day, I think that the Department of Education should again invest more in the safety and security of learners in our schools, because most of our time, our constituencies spend most of their time at schools. So I think the Department of Education should at least redirect resources to school safety and have more programs that will make the school more even safer from educators and learners and outsiders of the schools.
Yeah. All right, just to wrap things up, perhaps, Bernice, we can close off with you giving us a final, I suppose, a tally on the 111 cases that have been referred to the Education Labour Relations Council. Where are you with processing those? How many of them have seen a resolution? And perhaps in previous years, you can maybe give us a sort of percentage on, the outcomes of what usually is the pattern that we see where sexual misconduct cases are concerned in South Africa.
Thank you, Naledi. In terms of the statistics, when we look at the past 2 financial years, which is 2023-24 and 24-25, we have seen there has been an increase in the numbers, with 82 cases reported in 2023-24 and then the 111 in the current financial year, with KZN being the highest reporting province. Of the cases referred for the current financial year, we've had 39 cases where teachers were found guilty of sexual misconduct, and the processes applied as mentioned earlier. For us, 1 case reported is 1 case too many. So this escalation in the number of cases is quite worrisome. And one plea that we would like to make to the public is to feel comfortable to report these cases. We guarantee that the anonymity of the learners, teachers, or parents that report these cases will be protected, because there's, as the other speakers mentioned, there is underreporting in the system. And as this is a societal issue, working as a collective will ensure that we curb this
100%.
frightening problem that we see in society, which is unacceptable.
I wish we had more time to have this discussion, but I do appreciate the inputs of all of our guests. And as you hear Bernice saying, let's make sure that we do report. Failing to do so means that perpetrators continue what they have been doing. Thank you so much to Busang Lekeka, Deputy General Secretary of COSAS, Rosie Motene, who is activist and counsellor, Bernice Loxton, Media Manager of the Education Labour Relations Council, Dr. Mugwena Maluleke, General Secretary of SATU, and Sfiso Ngobese, Director for Safety in Schools at the Department of Basic Education. Got more news on the other side of this short break. Stay with us.